Have I ever made a decision for myself in my entire life? And I sort of felt like the answer to that was no.
Hi, friends. We have a very special guest today. Sabra Meretab has spent her career building payments products and leading engineering teams in fintech. When she's not debugging technical infrastructure, she's debugging her own understanding of the world around her through writing. She recently wrote an absolutely gorgeous piece on her Substack that she titled Small Steps for Healing and How to Fix the Earth-Sized Holes We Sometimes Carry. The minute I finished reading it, I knew I had to share it with you. So stay tuned for the one and only Sabra Meretab. Have you longed to use your voice, yearned to express yourself in a bigger way? Have you felt like you've got something important to do on the planet while you're here? If so, you're in the right place. This is the Ideas Love Community Podcast, and I'm your host, Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson.
I work hard, very hard. I work hard in the way that wellness influencers emphatically discourage. I work hard in the way that often makes my body scream and protest. This has always been my greatest strength and my most crippling weakness. It's a double-edged sword I keep enthusiastically sharpening. Allow me to be clear. There's nothing to be proud of in this. Pushing yourself to the brink is not cool, and I am not evangelizing it. It is a dark force of impulses that I've been battling for the better part of a decade. Balance has never come naturally to me, and my body pays steeply for it. So when recent college graduates sometimes ask me for advice, I tell them from the softest and truest part of my being, for the love of God, tender little turnip, avoid becoming like me. They laugh, and I don't know why, because I'm entirely serious. I've spent years unpacking this trait that makes me work so hard, all hours and all days of the week, until my body literally starts aching. I have made tremendous progress in the craft of following my heart, and I'm tremendously proud of that. But still, I've spent years and will need to continue to spend years analyzing and unwinding the demons that drive it. A concoction of self-doubt, fear of inadequacy, and an unshakable sense of responsibility. Recently, I described it to my parents as acute people-pleasing. My dad tilted his head and said, "Don't you mean that you just genuinely care about helping?" Sometimes small reframes like that, small changes, can move the front line forward in those battles that we fight with ourselves over decades. In any case, I have read the books. I have journaled the journals. I have listened to the thought leaders hoping my thoughts would, in one fell swoop, lead my actions to better places. I have had the late night conversations with my ceiling where I promise, solemnly, tearfully, that tomorrow I will be different. I often do not wake up different. There is, however, one sliver of light even on the days where I fall short. In the days where my actions and my values have drifted too far apart for too many hours into the evening. In the days I work so hard for so long that I neglect the fragile, one-time only miracle of my own life and the things that are truly important to me. Visiting my grandma, spending time with my parents, calling the people that make whole all of those holy parts of me. Each day, there's one moment I fiercely protect, even when I sacrifice those other meaningful moments. For a brief window of time, the weight I put on myself, the weight I subject myself to, is gently set down beside me. I walk into the gym and make a beeline for the track, a large indoor oval smack in the center of the building. To walk around it is already to put yourself on full display in front of the strength trainers in the free weight section. To run around it is to invite even more attention, even more obnoxiously. And to hop skip around it is to publicly declare, I have abandoned all shame and dignity. I do not walk the track. I do not run the track. I skip around the track. And I skip quite consistently. I love skipping. It's more fluid than walking, but less taxing than running. It's like dancing with a really great partner who whisks you so effortlessly that you don't need to think about where to place your feet. Your body does this buoyant little hop step, and suddenly you become 6 years old again and invincible. It is silly and astonishingly liberating. And there's something about the rhythm of skipping that feels so natural. Once you're in the swing of it, it's just easy. There aren't too many other aspects of life that I find move me forward with such ease. It feels ancient and innate. Our otherwise awkward, overthinking, two-legged bodies, so often unsure of themselves and prone to tripping, are somehow perfectly designed for this one silly spring-loaded motion. One day, a man in his 60s stopped me and said, "Watching you skip made me realize I couldn't remember how. So now I'm practicing." I certainly didn't intend to start a movement. I did not mean to start a cultural revolution inside a suburban gym. But now, every so often, I glance across the track and there's someone else doing a tentative hop step, a woman doing a cautious little skip, a middle-aged man rediscovering his inner recess. It feels like I've accidentally started a very small, very unserious rebellion. But why do I skip? I've asked myself this question, and the only answer I have is this. I skip because the world is filled with so many non-skipping sensations. My calendar does not skip. My inbox does not skip. Slack messages do not skip and always seem to find me. My chronic addiction to move with urgency does not skip with the lightness of dancing. The decisions I make multiple times a day and the memos I must write in preparation to make those decisions do not skip. The news cycle absolutely does not skip. I skip because sometimes I wake up with what feels like an earth-sized hole in my chest, and then I spend the day sprinting around attempting to fill it with so many somethings, with more output, with more frantic productivity, with other non-earth-sized things. It is comically insufficient. It is giggle-worthy, the oddity of being a human with cosmic-sized feelings, trying to soothe them at 11:42 p.m. hunched over a laptop. Why? Because I'm afraid of not doing enough? Not being sufficient? The hole is there, sweet girl, but this will not fill it. Sometimes the world feels enormous and unmanageable, each of us with our own unique Earth-sized crater, though the exact outline of our aches may be different. Frustration and conflicting feelings we navigate with our loved ones, our jobs, ourselves, and sometimes even our country. Sometimes the whole is not one thing, but carved by a million tiny things. There are days in which the feeling of helplessness sits heavy on my chest, even though I know I am not helpless. Still, it sits like a fog I wish to lift, but can hardly see through to even know the direction I should be going. And at the end of those days, all I have the strength to do is one small thing for me. For 20 minutes at the gym, around and around a track, I choose to listen to music and skip freely. I choose this ridiculous movement, this absurd sorcery. One time, as I was mid-hop, an older woman was shuffling the track with a silver walker. I was about to pass her when she plunged into conversation, as though we had been chatting all along. I screeched to a halt, nearly steamrolling this little old lady. "Oh, it feels great, doesn't it?" "It does," I replied promptly, though I had no idea what she specifically meant. I am a lifelong nodder, a professional pacifier of awkwardness. "The skipping, dear," she said. I remember skipping. I can't do it anymore, but walking now still gives me some of that feeling. And then this woman, shuffling determinedly with her walker, raised her fist in the air like she had just broken through a finish line with all the triumph of Sha'Carri Richardson. In that absurd and oddly holy moment, amidst all the weight I was carrying from things I still needed to do later that evening, a little old lady with a walker fixed a significant portion of the earth-sized chasm within me. The atrocities of the world did not suddenly find peace. My workload did not pulverize into sparkles, and I did not suddenly heal decades of some of my most maddening character traits. But the embodied joy in this woman scooting along the track and the sheer audacity to hold tightly to her agency rubbed off on me. We are often tempted to solve our deepest problems with equally grand solutions. Sometimes those are necessary. Other times, one small act will do. Sometimes it heals just enough. Then tomorrow we can decide if we want to flip tables or rewrite our entire story. First and foremost, though, we can afford to do a smidge of healing. The earth-sized hole in me is not filled by skipping entirely, but every day I take one small defiant hop that lifts me off the ground and all of life's frictions. Hop, step, hop, step. A reminder that I am allowed to move through this world in whatever manner most pleases me. That I am allowed to be foolish if such is required. It feels good to remind myself of my body and its ability to keep hunting for rhythms that feel right, even amidst other forces we are battling. The problems around us, the problems within us, they can certainly be enormous. But the first steps we take to heal them, those can be tiny.
Hey, friends, it's time for a quick break. I'm Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson. I'm an executive coach, a visibility accelerator, a maker of events that connects people to editors and agents and TED folks and the people that can open doors to all of those bigger stages and opportunities. I've been a conference designer, an editor-in-chief, a head of a radio station, and I have seen firsthand what makes really, really good ideas and really extraordinary voices stand out. If you want to get your voice into the world in a bigger way and build your thought leadership platform and write a book or start a podcast or get on big stages, then you'll want to pay attention to this. The Gateway Gathering and Pitch Fest, the next edition of it, is happening October 6th to the 8th of this year in 2026. And I always do 90-day sprints, coaching sprints leading up to it. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I only have a handful of spots, however, that regularly fill and sell out. And so I decided to add a group coaching sprint. We're starting in the middle of April, and you'll be able to sprint for 90 days, find your mission and message, work on your presence and delivery, and perfect that pitch that maybe you're going to pitch in front of all these agents and editors and the head of TED and entertainment execs in October. So if you want to be a part of it, check out the links below and apply. And now, back to the show. Oh my gosh. That was so fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun to read aloud.
So while you were reading it, of course, I've read it, but while you were reading it, I just kept taking notes about these little moments that were giving me chills, that were making me get teary-eyed. There were so many, but I would love to hear when you were, what sparked that when you were writing it. How were you feeling? What did you wake up one morning with this idea? How did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, I think in a way I would say that it happened in a way similar to sort of the content of the piece, as in um, as in it was sort of just a small decision to journal on a topic, uh, and then those small decisions can change your perception of yourself and the world in sort of interesting ways. And this was just another example of, choosing to make a small decision one morning and having it turn into something that brought me delight to put on paper and put out into the world. So it was not planned or thought through ahead of time. It just spilled out because I allowed myself to feel something and allowed myself to express that in a way that was ultimately very healing.
It's so joyful. I mean, like when you were just saying that, I was like, gosh, it's like the writing itself was skipping in a way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think like there is something about the whimsy in, in the act of skipping, of course, but there's something about whimsy that needs to be embraced in this new world that we're living in. And and I've enjoyed identifying more of that in my life and cherishing it. Because, just because all of the hard things in the world are going on doesn't mean that we should ignore the, the wonderful moments that keep us grounded and keep us reminded of what we should be feeling or what we should be pushing for. And you need that optimism to carry you through the hard times.
Yeah, that's so true. And I just love the juxtaposition that you did in this piece, which is why I think it resonates so much because you're acknowledging both sides of the coin. And you acknowledged how hard you work how, to the point of being, it's harmful to your body and all of those things. And also you have this other side that's like, no, I have a balance. Like you've got this balance to that. Is that something that you feel like you've had to work at?
Definitely. Definitely. I think it's not something that you ever like if your nature is a certain way, I think it's a lifelong battle. And I think for a long time that put me in the pits of despair because I was like, I will never win this battle. And then you realize that the battle does not have any start and end. It's like this is just your life. So every day it's just whatever you choose to change on that specific day.
Mm.
Um, I don't expect to come out with some sort of like triumphant change in my core traits that compel me to push myself really hard. I just hope to come out with days that have marginally better balance and hopefully that's cumulative in some way. But I'm not looking to make a sort of 180 overnight.
That's so realistic of you.
Yeah, yeah. It's painful. It's painful to be realistic. It's like I want to. So sometimes the flipping tables is quite nice too, but
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh. Well, so there were so many beautiful things that I wrote down here, like the late night conversations with your ceiling. How many of us have had those? Oh,
yes. Oh, my ceiling is like intimately aware of the details of my life. It knows all of my dirty secrets and where all of the skeletons are buried. But I think there is something about having this space that you choose to confide in. Like for some people, that is your journal. For some people, that is your therapist. For me, it is staring at my ceiling at night where I have my most kind of like honest and raw conversations with myself. And I think it's just because, um, like if I can't be truthful in that moment of solitude with this blank ceiling staring back at me, that is a very receptive, like all ears audience. Like, then how am I ever going to sort of be honest more broadly? So for me, that's always been my safe space.
I love that you said it's always been my safe place because, my interpretation of the ceiling at night is frustration and I don't want to be awake and it's about worrying and whirling in my head. And I love that you have this reframe that no, no, this is my friend. This was so
Yeah.
good.
It is a reframe. And actually it was sort of interesting recently on that topic. Um, I was kind of in the past week, I was in kind of another one of these moods where I was working very hard and sort of frustrated. And this was in the afternoon. And my partner just came up to me and he said, "You're safe. You know that, right? You're safe." And and it just kind of, it's such a simple statement and um, such a reflection of the of like the physiological effects that many of us feel working so intensely. And yet, when you just decouple yourself from that for a brief moment, you can see how absurd a lot of the anxiety is that we carry and how self-created it is and how that perception very much becomes your reality. So now I've started telling myself that simple statement more often, whether it's when I'm looking at my ceiling or just midday. I just tell myself, you're safe, right? Worth reminding.
Gosh, I love that so much because you're right. So much of it is in our heads, and so much of it is, it feels like it's just creating this urgency for no reason, it feels like, or made up urgency. That if
Yes.
something happened to us tomorrow, like the trains are still going to be running if we had to sit down.
Yeah, which I think is a very hopeful sentiment, really. Like, I think that is depressing for some people, the fact that the world will continue on if you are not there.
Mhm.
But it can also be an equally uplifting sentiment because it removes all of the burdens that you feel today. So I personally appreciate that feeling of insignificance because it weirdly puts me the most in my body as a reminder of the significance of me doing right by myself. Because
Love
if,
that.
nothing else really matters if you don't have that.
That's right. Um, you said this phrase too, the miracle of your own life. I love
Yeah.
that. Say more.
Yeah. I think when you get caught up in the humdrum routine of daily life, it's again so easy to uh, forget how spectacular all of this is. Like the concept of existence is spectacular. The concept of like walking outside and sitting in grass and all of these things that are alive around you is spectacular. And the fact that as far as most of us know or can feel, it is very much this one brief, uh, you know, speck of time that you are on this earth. And that is so remarkable and should be considered a miracle. And it's just really hard to remind yourself of that sometimes because um, because there are so many competing noises looking for your attention that draw you away from pausing and realizing the miracle of all of this.
I love that so much. It reminds me of there's a photo that my daughter and I took on a plane when we were going to New Zealand, and I was going to go race 4,000 other breast cancer survivors in dragon boats from 21 different countries. And my daughter and all her friends were taking these photos, from above where your face fills up the entire photograph. And it reminds me, that perspective reminds me of what it's like to just be so focused on the fear or the whirling or the internal battle. And there's this beautiful thing that happens when you go out in nature to some beautiful landscape where you automatically decenter yourself. And so I often, when I'm giving talks, I'll show this other photograph that I took at another dragon boat race where I was out in British Columbia hiking. And there's this beautiful landscape behind me. And I automatically put my head in this tiny little spot in the corner and let the rest of the magnificence of this view be most of the photo. And I just think about that decentering and really looking at something else. Like that's what this essay that you wrote, why I was so struck by it. And I was like, you have to be on the podcast immediately. It was because you did that in this piece. You decentered yourself, but you also decentered anxiety and you decentered hopelessness. And it was just beautiful and magnificently done. And I just want to share with you how struck I was at this piece. And so much of your writing, I just absolutely adore. So I want everybody to go to your Substack and sign up immediately. In the piece, you said skipping is like dancing with a really great partner, and that you don't have to worry where you put your feet. And you just said it's easy. Like I could feel that was an inhale and an exhale, like this really nice long exhale. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I love the concept of dancing because it is something that is inherently a little awkward and embarrassing, assuming you're not a professional, and requires, tremendous work to be fluid at. And that is how so much of so many things in life feel, as in they are new for you, they are hard for you. Like you will stumble, you must train in order to really be sort of proficient and successful. And it requires a lot of diligence for a long time outside of your comfort zone. Um, and there's a lot of, satisfaction and rewards that you can reap from putting in the work for that. But gosh, it is also so nice when you just dance with a really great partner who sort of carries you through the motions and you get all of the joy and less of the friction. and less of the fear of stumbling because you already know that you are sort of cradled um, within these gentle guardrails. And it's actually funny. I used to go to this country swing dance bar out in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And I used to just love dancing there. And I was terrible at it, but you would just pair up with a random dance partner. And many of these people were incredible country swing dancers. And after a long week of work, this became this time, this moment that I cherished to go country swing dancing. Um, and I just loved it for all of the carefree ease that came with it. And now I'm looking for more of those little things that give me that feeling, and just remind me what it kind of should feel like when I just like remove all of the heavy burdens and expectations of doing things well.
Okay, we got to, oh, that just gave me like full body chills. Yes, it is so that the heavy expectations of doing things well, that is something I think so many people feel, and certainly so many of my listeners feel. I've really been so inspired by watching how you've used language and you've used writing and you've used words to kind of find your way through some of this. What is it about writing that, or how did you find the writing? Tell me about that.
Yeah. I too have been shocked how much writing has changed my life. And I mean, like it sounds so melodramatic to say that, but it's not even slightly dramatic. It's completely accurate. Um, and I stumbled into writing when I was really in my most unhappy state, when I was the most cripplingly stressed, when I was the most cripplingly anxious, and when I was like deeply jaded by the rhythms that I had resigned myself to for the next 50 years. I was like, all right, here it is. I'm just going to work and then die. And I started journaling during that time out of sheer desperation. And I actually think that that feeling you start to feel, whether it's burnout, whether it's like exhaustion, fatigue, depression, um, I think that that is like the most healthy place that you can be in order to get to the place that you need to go. It is this important alert system that is built into our body that starts going off saying that something is not right here. And it is only when you reach a critical, sort of like a critical point there that it compels you to start to make changes because you're just so desperate. And so for me, that desperation drove me to start experimenting with anything that might make me feel better. And it made me throw out all of my cynicism for things that I thought I would be resistant to or that I thought were kind of cringy or try hard or too woo-woo. And journaling was one of those things where I was like, honestly, it can't get worse than this. So like people talk about this journaling thing, so let's give it a go. Um, and that's really how writing started. And really quickly, it became this thing that I craved on a daily basis. And it became this thing that allowed me to want to enforce boundaries in the amount of work that I was doing each day related to my career. And the mere act of writing in and of itself also became extremely healing because writing forces you to articulate things so concretely that your mind is otherwise really good at letting float around in some ambiguous state. It's just abstractly anxiety or abstractly stress, but it's not really broken down into what flavor of that? What's the root cause of that? And writing allows you to kind of do this in a judgment-free zone. That's how I found it.
So beautiful. I think it feels important that people know that this work, this hard work that you do, that you've been very successful in your life and you were successful early in your life. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how just flesh that out for people a little bit?
Yeah. Definitely. Like it's always such an interesting concept, like the concept of success. Um, because it's true that my resume is is something that I'm happy with. My parents are happy with. The world is happy with. They tell me it's good. And uh and yet it's so interesting to feel as though you're succeeding and at the same time that you deeply settled in some way, which is what I did feel for a really long time. So it's true
Wow.
that like my childhood was certainly defined by academics. It was defined by being highly performant. It was defined by tons of extracurriculars and constantly going above and beyond, taking college classes when I was still in high school. Um, and getting into all the schools that I wanted to get accepted to. Um, there was a time in college where I started to get the sense that this would just continue forever, and that same concept of like I'm just going to work and then die, and uh, and in college, I did all of the things that are so encouraged at some of these schools where it's like you get the job, you get the internship in investment banking, and like you do your summer internship, and then you get the full-time offer, and then you go and do that for 2 years, and then you go to business school. And I was so on that path and hurled myself after school into less so investment banking ultimately, but into tech, that I just never really paused to ask myself what I want. And it was a weird realization to come to. And I remember kind of vividly asking myself this question is like, have I ever made a decision for myself in my entire life? And I sort of felt like the answer to that was no. And the only time that I made a decision that felt like it was truly for myself in my life was when I chose to leave my job in April of 2024 and take an undetermined amount of time off. And that was the most blissful year and a half existence ever.
And you wrote a book during that time.
True, I did. I wrote a book during that time, and I'm in the process of getting that book published. Um, and I think, but I think what was so interesting about that is, kind of this concept that floats around of like, the more I heal, the less ambitious I become. But I think there's an asterisk on that where it's just your ambition shifts and it shifts fundamentally towards things that are that don't anchor on what the world rewards and are very much self-driven. And so during that year and a half, I worked tremendously hard. It's not as though I didn't work hard, but it was so blissful and in many ways had that lightness of dancing with a really great partner. It was like I am in rhythm and flow, and and I'm learning, but there is also an ease for this, strictly by virtue of the fact that it feels so aligned with what calls to me. And so that was a really beautiful window of time, and I'm continuing to kind of like carry those learnings forward.
I want us all to live so aligned. Hmm. It's an
Yeah,
amazing feeling, isn't it? When you are so doing what you were put here to do.
definitely. And I know that's something that you have preached a lot and pushed me deeply on actually as as my coach. And it's something that again there's so many concepts. It's like when you say them out loud, they sound woo-woo. They sound, like abstract and inactionable in life. But it is very much the kind of thing where it's like, oh, once you get it, you get it. Like, and it's almost like you can't unsee it. Once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. And and I really felt that when I found what alignment is supposed to feel like. And so I think this exercise of trying to find what that is so important. And people should explore different avenues to find that, whether it's, you know, whether it's just exploring different creative pursuits, whether it's exploring different careers, whether it's working with people that push them to think differently, like yourself. Um, I think it's important to do that work, and it will never be a waste of time. And the problem is that we always make it lower priority. But the reality is that is the single most important and urgent pursuit that all of us should be doing.
Oh my gosh, I got full body chills. I want to ring a bell for that one. Pull
Ring the
up my
bell.
little bell,
I
little happy
like
face bell. You have such a strong voice. And meaning, the voice that comes through in your writing is so uniquely yours. A lot of people really struggle with finding that, and they also, feel insecurity about that, and all of. And I just wonder for you, this journey to finding this voice that you're now expressing into the world. You're going to have a book come out. You've got your Substack. You're speaking in front of groups. Like how did that evolve to a place where you said, yes, A, this is me, and B, I'm ready to get this into the world?
Yeah, I think that finding what finding the voice that felt authentic to me was probably an exercise in reading more. And I know that's like a really tactical, a really tactical mechanism, but I say that because I was so resistant to reading for so long. And that's a reflection of the fact that I was just like all about academics, all about career, and there was no reading for joy in my life.
Mm.
And then when I was sort of going through this sort of reawakening of myself, I started to read a lot more, to read for pleasure. And as part of that, I started to hear voices that resonated with me and voices that didn't. And I think naturally, it I don't know if it was merely the fact that it was like giving me permission to speak in the same type of authentic voice or what exactly, but I think there were a couple of writers that really felt like they were speaking to my soul. And it allowed me to kind of unlock the part of myself perhaps that just spoke back. And so I think that's how I stumbled into my voice. And it's, I hope to bring that more into the world. But ultimately, I think that um, I think there's nothing wrong with with kind of seeing the writing of others as a way to inspire the voice that feels right to you. Like there is no intellectual property on voice, and there are many voices out there that are probably similar, and perhaps we all have the same running monologue in our head. So I think it's just about kind of almost like learning the language that already exists in the ether that speaks to you, and then it will help unlock your ability to speak back to it.
I love that so much. Please keep sharing your voice. Your voice makes the world a better place for all of us.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. This has been wonderful.
I could talk to you forever and ever and ever. What do you want people to leave with this conversation that, to reflect on, to carry with them into the world?
Hmm. I think the message that I hope people take, and the message that I continue to repeat to myself, is just the whole the whole concept of sort of optimism, and optimism for the sake of making small changes. And I want that message to sink in from the perspective of, having hope and having optimism is not at odds with taking action. In my mind, it is very much the catalyst that creates the most action in you. And so, regardless of what people are feeling, whether it's that despair or stress or crippling anxiety, uh, if you don't first have the belief that things can be better, then you won't take the actions that actually drive towards it. And so I hope the message here is one of like is one of encouraging the tremendous amount of agency that we all have, and the fact that we are all lucky to say in many cases, we are all free. And sometimes we forget that. And it's important to just continue to remind yourself of that. And if you remind yourself of that, it will take you to better places and it will push you to act in a way that finds what alignment means to you.
Let's do this again.
Yeah, definitely. This is fun.
This is so fun. Wasn't Sabra fantastic? Oh, so go over and find her Substack at snackablegrowth.substack.com. It's my job to activate the voice of soul in the world. And today you heard Sabra's voice, the voice that came from her aligned center, the very core of who she is. It's time for your voice to come out to play, whether that's on stages, on pages, or through a microphone from the comfort of your own home. And if you need help, I'm here. Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast gave you chills, then please like it, review it, subscribe, and share it with the folks that you think may need to hear it. Until next time, what would it feel like for your energy to be huge? Have you longed to use your voice, yearned to express yourself in a bigger way? Have you felt like you've got something important to do on the planet while you're here? If so, you're in the right place. This is the Ideas Love Community Podcast, and I'm your host, Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson.